Welcome back. Today we are going to be talking about Baki, specifically the Netflix Baki, and we're going to be talking about what makes this an interesting show to watch, what's good, what's bad, basically a general review of the show. So, first off, if you're going to Baki expecting something serious or expecting to get something deeper out of it than surface level, you're not going to have a good time. This is anime junk food. This is turn your brain off and just watch the big muscly people fight. It's a similar enjoyment that you get from JoJo's, watching the pure spectacle of ridiculousness just jumping across the screen. It is insane. The characters are huge and big. They do stuff that's not humanly possible. They shake off bullets, punches, their skulls get fractured, and they keep going. It is a wacky show. Do not expect to have a good time looking at the philosophical aspects of what makes Baki Baki. Instead, just have a great time for what it is, a wacky, insane fest of insane fury. Now, to get a good example of what kind of show you're going to be watching, the first season has a theme, synchronicity. What is this? This is a plot device MacGuffin that nobody cares about that's only brought up for 5 minutes of on-screen time. What is synchronicity? Well, sometimes stuff happens for no reason around the world. It's wacky. And this is why everyone's going to Japan to fight. Enough said. So everyone shows up in Japan and starts fighting. In a typical episode of Baki, there's about 15 minutes of pure fights, just throughout the entire show, from character to character, jumping around, watching these fights, watching the characters grow through these fights. Now, the parts that suck are whenever it goes off in the fights for the 5 minutes of off time that it has. Baki's fights are high energy, high octane. The show has some budget issues at certain points where they'll use 3D animation to compensate. If you pause on large crowds, there's definitely quite a few repeating faces. But in general, Baki's art style is incredibly distinctive, similar in the way that JoJo's art style is distinctive, with the incredibly muscly faces and rippling bodies of every character that steps on screens, exuding a presence that most shows simply don't have. You can recognize someone based off the muscle in Baki, which is an impressive thing to accomplish in a show, to have such a distinctive style, but presented in such a unique way. Now, moving on to the bad. As I said, some of the instances with low budget aren't great. Baki's music is pretty good though, and it keeps that high energy octane fights up the entire time. This is the OST of Baki that I'm playing right now, and you can really hear the pumping iron right before the fight starts. In Baki, a lot of insane wacky shit happens. If you want it to be realistic fights, that's not what you're going to get. Every character has some sort of gimmick, power that they tap into. It is very similar. I think I'm peaking my mic, so I'm going to turn up my volume down for a second. If you're looking for fights to make sense, that's not what you're going to get from Baki. You're just going to get high octane fun. Most of the techniques won't make sense. Most won't, even a little bit. But the characters will develop through these fights. They might not be the most realistic fights, but they are going to be pleasing to the eye. It has a very similar aspect like JoJo's, where the fights are so good and they bring such high energy that it is interesting to watch. But instead of using strategy to figure out what your opponent's doing, there is some of that in Baki. A lot of it is simply, how do I put it? Simply figuring out what your opponent's fight style is, and either using his own style against him, or figuring out a counter style that works just as well. Baki does this a lot. I am still peaking my mic. I gotta turn myself a little bit more down. Now, this is impressive that Baki manages to accomplish this, because pretty much the only series that does it well, that makes the show actually watchable, is JoJo's. Similarly, because all the fights are amazing in JoJo's. These fights aren't at that same level, and stands really pick up in JoJo's. This does not have stands, obviously. This has just insane styles and insane people. The sheer magnitude of the concepts that these characters embody, such as Yujiro Hanma, who wants to have the strength to rival any nation's military. Muhammad Ali Jr.'s quest to create the perfect martial arts. Some characters want to prove that fighting isn't always strength. There is insane characters in Baki, and watching these insane ideologies that make no sense to real world people, these ludicrously insane ideals being smashed against one another, is the joy of watching Baki. Seeing such insane people perform on a field of superhuman strengths make the show incredibly enjoyable, giving it that high octane feel. Now, the pacing is fast at times and slow at others. It's a pretty well paced show. It slows down to a drag every time they talk about Baki's love life and they bring up whatever the hell that girl is. I don't care. She shouldn't even be in this show. None of the characters are quote unquote well written. They're enjoyable to see on screen and they're cool in their fights, but you don't really get too much out of character to character interactions besides the typical fighting aspects. Now, Baki does briefly tackle a lot of things, subjects of post-traumatic stress disorder, and other such fighting-related problems, but that's not what Baki's about. At the end of the day, Baki's about having a good time. Baki probably gets away with what it is because it knows what it's trying to be. It's not trying to be more than it is, except when it comes to romance aspects, which could be cut from the entire story. It has a bit of narrator syndrome, where just the narrator says something to make whatever the character on screen is doing to seem more badass than it actually is. In a lot of aspects, what the character is doing can just simply speak for itself, and it doesn't need that extra push from the narrator in order for it to seem more impressive than it actually is. All in all, I recommend giving Baki an episode. If you watch Baki for an episode and you don't like it, you're not going to like the show. If you watch Baki for an episode and you do like it, well, the rest of the show is going to be like that. So I would give it a few more episodes and keep going. Like JoJo's, it is a very anime show. If you don't like JoJo's, you're probably not going to like Baki. If you are a serious martial artist and you just want to watch for some realistic fights, this is a show that's not for you. This is anime junk food. There's big muscly men just punching each other. It's insane fun, but on top of that surface level aspect, you're not going to be getting too much of Baki. Yeah, that's all I have to say. And like if you like this video. More videos will come out of this. I make more videos like this on the channel. I'm thinking about doing some more reviews. If you leave me a comment if you want to see me do a review on something specific. And drop a like and leave a comment. And subscribe if you want to see more content like this. See y'all in the next video. Bye-bye.